Hello everyone, I'm Tom Cherry Holmes, and this is another video in the Retro Computing Archaeology series. In this video, I talk about the very first Amiga music tracker called the Ultimate Sound Tracker. I show what it was like to use the piece of software, and actually to start off, I start off by comparing it to a more popular tracker, the one that ultimately became the standard, that is Protracker version 1.1b, and show just how quickly things actually evolved as we take and then peel back the layers to show the Ultimate Sound Tracker and where things began. But what was the Ultimate Sound Tracker? The Ultimate Sound Tracker was a development tool. You might be surprised to hear me say it's not really a music composition program. That wasn't its first major, and that wasn't its first intent. It was actually a development tool so that a game developer could pass off to a music composer and say, here, write me a game soundtrack, and the composer could send back the song data along with the instruments to take and embed into a particular game. And the reason that Sound Tracker was so important in the context of music composition and playback on the Amiga was that it was the first of its type. That is, it played musical notes on a piano roll-like matrix to trigger small samples and to basically arrange these piano rolls into patterns and the patterns into songs. And doing it this way had a number of advantages. That is, the song data was very small because you were only storing notes and you were only storing small samples, which could easily be loaded. Furthermore, because of the way that the Amiga sound generation hardware worked, it was very easy to take and tell the Paula chip to go play a sound and not have it impact the CPU whatsoever. So the end result was you had songs that basically were very small, very compact. You can see that this particular tune here is 69 kilobytes here for the whole thing. That's the song data and all the instruments. And it was very easy to embed in your own programs because there was a replay routine that was provided, and all you had to do was fill in the blanks, call the initialization routine, and then every vertical blank just call the update routine to take and play the next note. It was that simple, and it didn't take up very much CPU time. So it was a win-win for game developers. And oddly enough, it was a win for another group of people who were interested in making graphic demos for their crack groups, because they could take and make amazing songs, very little space, take the replay routine and embed it into their work. But of course, with Sound Tracker, because the crack groups got interested, they immediately took a look at it and went, yeah, okay, this piece of software is serviceable, but hey, we really want to make it better. So Sound Tracker was disassembled, it was commented, reverse engineered, however you want to put it, and new features were added. New features, new instrument commands, etc. And over time, this built an entire scene that vastly outpaced the intent and the author of the original program. So while Karsten would release ultimately two main versions of the software, these were quickly left behind. So with that, I'll talk a bit about Protracker. Those of you in the Amiga scene undoubtedly know Protracker. Some of you have spent time in it writing music. It is considered by many to be the gold standard for Amiga sound trackers. It has a lot of wonderful features and is actually, as we'll see in a bit, the result of a whole lot of refinements. But what is a tracked song? I'm avoiding using the term module here explicitly, and there's a reason for this, which I'll go into later, but I'm not using the term module here. This is a song. It's made up of notes that are being played on a piano roll. They move down, and these piano rolls are cut into lengths of 64 rows each. Each of those is called a pattern. You have different patterns. Pattern 0 here, pattern 1, pattern 2, etc. And you can think of these as musical phrases. And in fact, at the default tempo, if you take and divide these up in 4s for each quarter note, it works out roughly to about 4 measures of quarter notes, roughly. So each of these notes has an instrument number attached to it in the first 2 digits here, and the last 3 digits here actually indicate a command, which is something you can do to a particular note, such as bending the pitch of the note down or up, adding vibrato, changing the volume dynamically, and so on. The program itself is divided up into several major sections. We've seen the piano roll down here. We have some basic status displays here in the middle. We have some memory statistics which were added in, for example, as part of Noise Tracker, and ultimately made its way all the way into Protracker here, so that we can keep track of how much memory we're using, which is very important because in order to be efficient and to utilize the Amiga hardware as effectively as it can, all of the instrument data has to be loaded into chip memory. And coincidentally, the song is also loaded into chip memory as well, even though it doesn't have to be. You have over here on the left-hand side the basic control panel of the software here to take and move around in the song. So you can change the current song position and see each position here. These are, you take the patterns, you concatenate them into positions, and these make up your song. You have a length here to say how many patterns you want to string together to make the song. And you've got instrument parameters such as fine-tune parameters, the sample number, which corresponds to each individual instrument down here, the volume you want to use for a particular instrument, which is how loud or how soft it is, and some things that are specific to a particular sample for an instrument, such as how long the sample is, and whether or not you want to take and loop the sample at a particular point over and over again. We move over here to the right-hand side, and this is sort of the global control panel to get to other parts of the program. These are buttons. So you take and press play to start playing the song. You can play a particular pattern, so it'll play this pattern over and over again. Edit will bring you into edit mode so that you can change notes, and so on. You can stop to get out of edit. You can clear, in Protracker and in Noise Tracker, you can quickly clear your song, your samples, everything, so that you can take and quickly get to a nice clean slate. You have in Protracker and actually in later versions of Noise Tracker too, you had the ability to quickly take and do things like note transpositions, octave transpositions for particular tracks, etc. Tracks or patterns, etc. Allowing you to quickly transpose things very easily. We can exit here and go into, for example, hold on. I see, oh, that's why. Oops. Let me E out of that. We can, of course, take and record certain things live. So you can record note data as you play it. And this is good if you're actually reasonably proficient with the keyboard to be able to do something. We don't have a sample loaded in, and I'll show you how to load a sample in just a moment. We have a preset list, so we can load in notes. Really simple. Instruments. Let's go ahead and just load something in here. Let's say I'll just do Blubsing. Sure, bam. All I have to do is click on the instrument, it loads it into place, and now if I take and play this track here, this is just random, but you'll see that now we're playing things. Boom, 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 etc. So, the preset list. Why is this called the preset list? Well, these are instruments that you can quickly call up at any given time to put into your song. You don't have to go hunting through directories to get to them. And in later versions of Noise Tracker and in Protracker, this became very easy to use because you can filter by specific discs. So you can zero in on exactly the instruments you want to have as you build your instrument library. And to complement the preset list, you had the preset list editor so that you could take and have floppies full of samples, take and load them into the library, and it would help you take and select, if you selected a particular song sample, okay, it would take and load the sample and its metadata and get it ready for use inside the program. The preset list editor was not in Soundtracker to begin with, and I'll actually touch on that when we get to Soundtracker. Of course, in later versions of Protracker, you now have a setup menu so that you can do things like set up your keyboard splits and have different configuration files for all sorts of different things as you need them. Different little tools that you can quickly have up here, because as people started using things, oh, I need to do something. Okay, go start something, go use something, and it all got thrown in here. We can even print our scores, etc. here from Protracker and Noise Tracker. We even have MIDI support, and just on and on and on. And they kept adding things into the programs. There's even a built-in sampler so that you can take and sample your instruments, and so that you can sample everything in and get your instruments in the program here if you have a sampler plugged into your parallel port. So my point being was that as these programs evolved, these features kept getting added so that it would be easier and more efficient to be able to write music for these intros, these demos, etc. And it became... And to a lesser extent, its original intent for writing music for games, but all of this had to evolve, and I show you all of this as it is right now, because to take in contrast with Soundtracker. Now, in order for me to go into Soundtracker here, I'm actually going to flip my profile here. Now, what I've shown you was from 1991, and it pretty much represented the stability point at which roughly 4 years of solid innovation finally came to a stability point. Now, let's contrast this and go all the way back to the summer of 1987 for this first version of Soundtracker. For this, I'm actually going to have to use a totally different system profile. And first thing you'll notice here when we boot this up is that we have to use Kickstart 1.2. This version of Soundtracker will only work with version 1.2. That's it. You try to use it with 1.3, it will crash. You try to use this with a hard drive, it will crash. And in fact, early versions, all the early versions of Soundtracker 1, 2, 3, 4, Jungle Command, DOC, etc., all the way up past Noise Tracker 1.1 would crash if you tried to use them with Kickstart 1.3. This wasn't too much of a problem because at the time that this was released, the vast majority of Amiga 500s that were in use at this point all had the Kickstart 1.2 ROM. And if you had an Amiga 1000, well, you would just load the Kickstart 1.2 disk. So anyway, I digress. Sound Tracker 1.21, the ultimate Sound Tracker. This was the very first one, right here. And if we take a look at it, we'll see that the interface is a lot more sparse. First thing you'll notice here, there's no disk op menu. All of the disk operations are actually right here on the main page. And you might know, where's load module? There wasn't a load module. Sound Tracker didn't load modules. In fact, until Sound Tracker 2.0, and in point of fact, Master Sound Tracker 3.0, modules weren't a thing. They did not exist. They were created by the cracking community in order to self-contain songs and instruments into the same file. You'll notice that here you have the different status displays here for the song, the current preset you have in list, and the current instrument that you're editing here. And yes, there are some misspellings here. Length is misspelled, not once but twice. And you can't just edit these values from the keyboard. You have to use the plus and the minus keys to edit them. The other major thing is you'll notice on the right-hand side for these potentially destructive operations right here, there are confirmation keys. These aren't shortcuts. These are the keys you have to press in order to confirm the action. So, for example, if I want to take and load a particular song, I can't just do this, because if I do that, it'll go, I don't know what I'm loading, and it will just load a whole bunch of blanks. You'll notice there's no file requester. There's nothing to indicate that you need to actually come down here to the song name and enter the song name here. Enter it in, press return so the cursor goes away, mouse cursor goes back to gray. Then we can take and load the song. But we have to press load song, press the L key, and it will load the song into memory. First with the song data, followed by the instruments. And you'll see it loading each instrument individually here. And it will attempt to load all 15 instruments. And yes, I said 15. Sound Tracker originally only supported 15 instruments in a song. Of course, this would be later extended to 31 by unknown of DOC, but that came later. The first versions of Sound Tracker only had 15 samples. So for that, one of the other things that you will notice as well is that the instrument, the matrix display, the piano roll display down here is a little bit different as well. Since you only have 15 instruments and all of the numbers are displayed in hexadecimal, it's 0 through F, so you only need one digit to display a particular instrument number. And we have here an F06. There is no F command in Sound Tracker at all. You cannot specify the tempo dynamically inside the song. You actually have to go in and hand specify that inside 2 bytes in the file, which provide a delay value. And when you use the replay routine, you have to use that same delay value in there so that the replay routine will actually use it. Anyway, there's no other tempo. So the default tempo here is what we would call F06. That is roughly 4 measures of quarter notes at 125 beats per minute approximately. So the other thing that we'll notice, we can hit and display a pattern. There's no VU meters. No VU meters, any indication that something is being played at all. Just, it's rolling and it's playing this pattern over and over and over again. We can switch patterns, play this pattern, and so on. But if we play the whole song, while it will reset to the top of the pattern, it will not scroll and show you the song as it's being played in the piano roll view below. You'll notice that there's some text up here for melody, accompany, bass, percussions. And this is, ironically, it's just window dressing. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just these are polite suggestions as to where you could potentially put the various instruments in your composition and lay them out. So put your bass line over here, your percussion and drums trigger over here, etc. But you don't have to follow that at all. Let's see. So the other major thing too is that let's go ahead and for this next piece, I'll actually load the song that I'm currently working on right now. I will go ahead. This is a cover of Gazuzu's Go Go Gorilla that I'm currently slowly working on here. We'll go ahead and put that in. We'll load the song. Clicking on the button, pushing L. And bring this into memory here. I'm doing this as kind of a little challenge to myself. We'll see how well it works out. So with this, we'll just go ahead and play the little bits and pieces here. I'll go ahead and play the song. Yep. So I'm slowly working on it here, and you can see there, it went ahead and played it. And so from this point on, it pretty much works a lot like the version of Protracker. A lot of the same, only some of the keyboard shortcuts are here. In fact, only a couple. So you have F6, F7, F8, F9, and F10 to take and move to various parts of a particular pattern very quickly, and that's really about it. The only other keyboard shortcuts are for octave transposition. So if I'm if I'm entering in notes and I want to be able to take and immediately use the octave above, I hit the F2 and I get that note. Next one right there, bam, and so on. Not hearing anything here because, of course, I'm using sample F, which doesn't have anything in it. But if we take and use Celeste, for example, we can hear, let's see, make sure, yep. I'll go to pattern 2 just because, and let's see, we'll just put in a particular note here. Go to edit, boop. Come on. Am I focused? Oh, come on. Ah, my window. Hold on a second. Come on. Oh, is it because, there it is, okay. And I'm putting in notes now that I'm in edit mode. Okay, of course I can hit the delete key to take and delete those notes out. But let's say we want to take and use a different instrument. Let's go back to pattern. Let's just load an instrument. And in this case, we're going to take and replace an existing instrument, the bassline sound. If we go all the way down here to instrument number 1, we can see that instrument 1 is being used over here in the bass section right here. And I'm going to replace that with squares. Now, To do that, if I was loading in my own sample, I would have to put in my instrument data disk, type in the sample here, load the sample here, and then once the sample's loaded, adjust the value for the sample length and any other parameters that I want to at this point, and at this point it uses my sample. But in this case, I'm using a preset. So this actually needs to happen in two sections. The first bit here, we need to take and select the particular preset that we want to use. And as we move the preset knob here, we can see the different instruments that are available. These are the instruments that are on the Ultimate Sound Tracker data disk. They are hard-coded into the program. There is no preset list editor, and there's no way to modify this preset list by hand. So these are the presets that we have, period. We'll go over here to squares. Pardon me, let's stop, that was a mistake. So squares, then we will take and use the use preset button, bam. Then we will take and that sets up the metadata over here on the left-hand side, and then we can load the sample. Now at this particular point, we can then take and play the pattern to hear the result. So there we go. That's really the gist of it here. I'm going to take and end this particular demonstration and this particular video with one final thing showing the replay routine, which is once you had something done, you would take and save your song. And then once it's saved, you have your song data and you have your instrument data. Well, what do you do with it after that point? You have to combine them together with the replay routine to put into your program. So we'll go ahead and boot into my other environment here, and we'll take a little look at the replay routine. Give it a moment here. Yep, there we go. Some nice little utilities here for 1.3 if you haven't used them. So here you go. We'll take and go into our CLI, our shell. We'll open it up here. And I'm going to go, I have it stashed away over here in work arc. And this is the replay routine that you have built into the, that came on the disks. That came with the system. This was on disk ST00. If we take and do a more on it, we'll see I have two versions here, version 2.3, which was the first one that was released, and Replay Public, which is version 2.4, which was released about 4 months after the initial release. So what we have here is start, end. So you basically have your replay routines, the things that you have to initialize, and the bits that you have to call. But one thing that you'll notice, there aren't that many effects. And in fact, if you caught the top of Replay 2.3, you'll see that there are only really two effects right here. There's arpeggio and pitch bend. That's it. So how do you use it? Well, you have to include this replay routine in your program. And at the bottom of the replay handler here, we have places where you put your include for each of the 15 instruments that you need to use, and the song file at the bottom here. The replay routine will then take and use that, and that's literally how you incorporated your music into your game, into your demo production, whatever. And this is how it started. I'm basically going to leave it here. More to come, but I wanted to take and just kind of show you guys kind of what it was like to use this stuff, especially this very first version of Sound Tracker. So, until next time, guys, have fun.